When I think about DILR and about OLLI, I think about three different origin sources. The first one is that Duke University, when I joined it in 1972, was very much an institution in transition. It had all of its old ways of doing things, and it was almost exclusively based on interpersonal relationships. And as its national reputation soared, and especially as the graduate school was being built and the professional schools were increasing their prominence, we started attaching ourselves not just to the South, but to the larger issues in higher education. And I realize in retrospect that had a lot to do with what happened with continuing ed and DILR and OLLI. I was supposed to, according to the deans, to counsel women who wanted to go back to school to complete their degrees. There were a lot of women at that point who had dropped out of school and didn't have their degrees or wanted to go back and work prepared to do so. But I hadn't talked to but a couple dozen, and it was really clear to me that they were looking for intellectual excitement in addition to what was going to happen in the classroom. They were really interested in more. So very soon, I set up a series of little classes. We held them in the East Duke parlors. I contacted people I knew. We collected $10, I think, from everybody and gave people a $200 honorarium for doing a seminar on women in the law or the psychology of women. I remember those two. I don't remember the other two. Anyway, it was very clear that there was a cohort that wanted to take classes and do things. Many of those were retired people, but not exclusively. So by 1975, I think it was, or 76, one of the two, we were holding those kinds of classes. And we had moved at that point to the Bivens building in the corner of campus where we sort of could do our own thing. No one was paying any attention. And there was one time at the Christmas holidays, I remember it very well. I just had my second child, and they were all coming down the stairs from a class, chattering and talking and all excited. And I said something that they thought was really stupid. That is to say, I said some version of, I can't wait, it's Christmas break, 2 weeks not in the office. And to a person, they said, what do you mean no classes for 2 weeks? I mean, they knew there were no classes for 2 weeks, but they were teasing me. They said, we want classes all the time. We don't want you to stop. What do you mean you need a break? At the same time, a very important person named George Maddox was someone I knew. I think Maddox's center was called the Center for Aging and Human Development. And he invited me to be on it. But they were already looking at the large-scale medical problem that we're dealing with right now, which is longevity. We're all living too long, and we have to do something with us. He knew lots more about the national scene than I did. So he made the contacts that enabled us to get started. So I think the mood at Duke at that time, which was changing from personal relationships, which you used but were bigger, the idea that people were coming on campus and wanted not just classes but more, and then George's national contacts were really what made it all possible. And I don't think he gets perhaps as much credit. He never participated in OLLI per se, that I know of, but he was instrumental.
When I assumed the role of acting director, when Jean O'Barr went off to England when her then husband was on sabbatical, I had inherited by that time a robust, yes, it was in its infancy. DILR was then 4 years old. And I served as the director from 1983 to 1995. So in all those years, I didn't have the infancy of DILR, but we did have challenges because DILR needed more space. We wanted it to grow, and it did grow. And getting space for DILR was the biggest challenge. And when I assumed the directorship, we moved into the Bishop's House, which gave DILR a better space than it had before. And in fact, it consolidated all of continuing education, which was good for me because I was able to get to know the DILR folks and so forth. So yes, there were people who did give lip service within the Duke community to the worth of DILR and its right, if you will, to have better space. But when push came to shove, the university had other priorities. And it wasn't until I moved into central administration, when I became vice provost in 1995, that I saw all the machinations around space. That was kind of moving from the margins, because continuing education, though a valuable program, is more marginal than other programs at Duke. We're not a land-grant institution. We're not a public institution that has always had a mandate to reach out to the public. So advocating for DILR was fine on one level, but in terms of getting space, it never did work out. And that was my biggest challenge as director of what we then called continuing education. When I assumed the directorship of continuing education, Sally Simmons was the director of DILR. When she retired, or said she would retire, the best decision I ever made in my life, in both continuing education and the summer session, which I eventually led to, and in the provost's office, was hiring Sara Craven. And she was the director as long as I was the director of continuing education. So Sara had a great ability to work with people in the administration. As much as we had support from Duke administration, it just never was to the degree that it might have been at a public institution, for instance, UNC, which built the Friday Center. Instead, at Duke, we have given more credence to continuing education in the professional schools. So yes, DILR and now OLLI have always had support, but there has to be a limit to that support because it isn't in part of the central mission of Duke University, which is a research institution. These were very important people in the formative years of DILR. The Looneys, Percy and Alice Looney, were wonderful people, and we have always wanted to diversify, if you will. I hate that word, actually. But to make DILR now OLLI, I'm assuming OLLI still has a goal of making the program extremely inclusive. So to have this couple as part of the founding membership was very important, really, in setting a tone. And Bill Wright was another person who was so active and president and so important that after my time, an award made in his name, and people who received that award for their leadership and activity in the program are extremely proud of it. And I remember all three of these people very well. One thing I've come to fully appreciate as I myself have gotten older. Now I'm 79 years old. Many of our DILR members were in that category. But now I can see more fully, as I am older, what it means to belong to an organization like then DILR and now OLLI. Satisfies a great craving.
When we started, we had 42 people. But I think most of those 42 people were still there when I got there. And one of the things that I really liked in the Bishop's House was watching the community of learners. I watched these people who were friends come together and learn from each other. In the early days, a group of institutes who were already in business, some of them as old as DILR, decided that it would be good if we got together and shared ideas and stuff. And so the Elder Hostel Institute Network was born. It was funded by Elder Hostel, the group that did all the trips for seniors. And it seemed like a perfect match. I was on the original board and stayed on it for a couple terms. During this time, when there were national meetings, I met the people from the Osher Foundation. They had been invited to come as resource people and as speakers to these meetings and to find out how we worked, but also to let us know that new institutes were going to be funded by the Osher Foundation at this remarkable rate. They were going to fund 100 programs sponsored by colleges at $1 million each. Never before had there been money like this available to us or to anybody in the field of older adult education. And over time, I got to thinking, it sure would be nice if some of us older institutes could get some of this money. We could use it. We know how to use it. And so I said that to a member of the Osher board, and he said, you know, you should really call Mary Bitterman, the executive director, and talk to her. So that gave me the courage to call her. And I did, as she was in California. And there was this long silence on the phone. And she said, can you have a proposal to me in 3 weeks? And I said, yes, you can. So we sent it off, and lo and behold, we got the grant. I think we were the first one of the established institutes for learning and retirement to get that grant. I think Duke University appreciated a lot what we were doing, but I also think they thought we were cute and that we were kind of a boutique program. We were mostly women and we were older, and that just didn't go a long way. The grant really helped us catch their attention. Then along came another grant from Osher. And this is my all-time favorite day at the office. I was at the office, and Mary Bitterman from California called me, and I was on another line. And I called her back, and she was busy. And we played phone tag all afternoon. And finally, it was 5 o'clock here, and it was only 2 o'clock there. And so I called her back, and I said, I'm going home. If you need to call me at home, whatever this is, please do. So I went home. I'm cooking supper. The phone rings. She said, and I could hear someone laughing in the background. She said, we just wondered if you'd like another $1 million grant. So I am in my kitchen with a frying pan and a spatula in my hands and shrieking in the kitchen, we've got another grant, which was just very much, I was totally unexpected and out of the blue. And we did know that we would change our names. That was part of it. Every few years, there was a push, especially by the membership, and especially by hard-driving businessmen, mostly men, who would say, this is such a wonderful program. How come you guys don't have more visibility on the campus and things? And we would say, gosh, we're trying, and we did try. Visibility has always been a problem, a concern.
It's an old tune with some new words, but it's the same old story. And I can't say it enough. We're not a land-grant institution. We're not a public institution. It is not part of our central mission. You'll always have people who value you, but what is it that you want? I'm asking you now, what is it you want to be evidence of that value?
This is the Bishop's house, home to DILR and OLLI for 38 years. This is where I attended my first OLLI social, my first OLLI class, and made many new friends. As we celebrate OLLI's 45th anniversary, we are deeply grateful for our founders, our leaders, and volunteers who built OLLI on such a strong, stable foundation. We remember and have deep gratitude for all of our volunteers, leaders, instructors, and staff who made this incredible milestone possible. And we are excited about the possibilities ahead for us. What are they? We want to build a more inclusive and diverse community within OLLI in all venues, in person, online, and on our staff. We want to secure for OLLI a space where we can have classes so that our members can connect and continue to learn from one another before and after classes. We want to build and expand upon our volunteer opportunities within the Durham community. We invite you to join us in making these opportunities a reality so that in 2027, when we gather to celebrate OLLI's 50th anniversary, we'll have so much more to celebrate.